Well, hello everybody. It's very nice to see you here and thank you for having me. My name is Tetyana Kucher and I'm from Ukraine. I'm an international student here at UNT in the tactile program, curriculum and instruction with a concentration in language and literacy. And today I want to tell you, and through this presentation, about the most important and the most surprising differences between the educational systems in Ukraine and in the United States. At first I thought that once I got this idea, I had so many things to tell you about, and I started preparing and I realized it's only 10 minutes long. So I'm going to talk for as long as they will let me. Okay. So I will start with telling you a little bit about my educational journey, academic journey, I guess. So from 2009 to 2013, I've been a bachelor's and master's student in Vinnytsia Teacher Training University. So that is Ukraine, and it is about the size of Texas, and yet it's still the biggest country in Europe. My last year here, when I was getting my master's program, I was a part-time student at Vinnytsia Teacher Training University and a full-time student at Southeast Missouri State University, where I've been a student since 2013 until 2015, and for the last year I worked as an ESL instructional specialist. After that, I started working as an ESL instructor at Stephen F. Austin State University, so I moved here to Texas. And in 2018, this is actually my first semester as a doctorate student, and I'm very excited. I'm a student and a teaching and a research assistant. So, as you see, I have been in the United States for about 5 years, so I don't have the cultural shock anymore. It's kind of past. But 5 years ago, it has been like a different world, because you do have to adjust to new culture, and you have to adjust to the new learning style. You adjust to new expectations. And because I've worked a lot with international office, and whenever they have the international student orientations, they would emphasize the importance of understanding what the professors are expecting from you. That is different from what you might have been used to in your home country. And it is really true. There's a lot of things that are different. For example, in some countries, students are expected to not ask questions at all, because it might be rude. And here, if you are not participating in a discussion, you are losing your point. So this kind of understanding. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about these differences, but I will start with secondary school. So I've never been to secondary school in the United States, so you can probably see the differences better than I do. So the idea for this presentation actually came from one of the readings that I did for the class I did this semester. Thank you, Dr. Laney. It was the Fadea proposal introduced by Mortimer Adler in 1982, which is an educational reform for K-12 education. So this is what I read, and you tell me, how does this sound to you? So just briefly, electives are wholly inappropriate at the level of basic schooling. The course of study to be followed in the 12 years of basic schooling should be completely required, with the exception for languages. What do you think about that? Does it sound reasonable?
No.
Probably not. Do you have electives from secondary school, sometimes the primary school, right? You have some extracurricular, or you basically make your own schedule. So I'll tell you that. Electives in Ukraine do not exist at all. Not on the secondary school level or high school, not even in university. I'm telling you that. They're going to change that, I hope, but at least when I was a student, everybody within the same program are following the same set of classes, same coursework. Bachelor's, 4 years, boom, you're in the same group of students, as if it's an extension of high school. So essentially, some people do view it as an extension of high school, just with larger course load, because you work a lot on your education. So I'm going to start with the secondary education first, before we get to college. This is actually my secondary school that I went to for 11 years. We have schools of general knowledge, specialized schools, gymnasiums. I'm going to focus on the schools of general knowledge, which are probably a little more common, and that's the one I went to. So they can be public and private. Public are, of course, free. And we have 11 or 12 grades. So it's not really standardized. Different schools have it differently. The basic distribution is the primary school, but sometimes it's 4. Again, they kind of decided within the school, middle school, and high school. So interesting thing about the schools of general knowledge is that the school officially starts September 1st. And I thought this is something I would mention because my friends from Ukraine get really surprised when I tell them that it's different in the United States. And the first day is traditionally celebrated as the first bell celebration. So everybody comes to school, they're all dressed up, they all bring flowers to their teachers, and usually there's no classes, so everybody's relaxed. And it's a very big day for the first graders. And this little girl, by the way, is me on my first day of school. Thanks, Dad, for taking a video. Yeah. So there's a lot of students, all grades, they're gathered in front of the school, the director says something, everybody claps, and then we get to school. In the school of general knowledge, pretty much like in the United States, all grades are, each grade is divided into classes. And beginning with the 5th grade, there is a little bit of variety, it's not all the same. The classes have specialization, but still, within the same specialization, you do not have a lot of variety. You're just following the coursework. So after middle school, which is the end of the 9th grade, students have a choice to either go to high school or to vocational school, which we call a college or a technical college, for example. And they may complete their secondary education there. It takes a little bit longer, but you get your specialized education to be more prepared for higher education, for university. I thought I would tell you about the ways we evaluate. So you can see it's a little bit different. So before 2000, back from the Soviet era, the remains of that era, we had a 5-point scale. And it was pretty straightforward. And then things changed. We used the European system, a 12-point scale. And it's very confusing. It used to be confusing. People are used to it now, but essentially they're still using it. Even on a, no, they don't use it in college, but in the secondary education, they're using this scale. So I guess they're trying to modernize it, make it more European. Also, another interesting thing is all students are required to have organizers, which we call diaries. But these diaries are not as personal. You don't write everything you want there. You only write your classes and your homework. You're being assessed on how neatly you keep your organizer. And also, we don't have, most schools don't have online system yet. Teachers cannot just check their kids' grades online. So, every class, the student gets a grade. We put it in an organizer, and at the end of the week, it's always the scariest day for students because the parents would ask them, "Come here, show me your diary." So this is how an old diary would look like, or an organizer. So you can see that there's 2, and they're all 5s. So something went really wrong there. The schedule also varies, so it just increases the number of classes from the primary school until the high school. We started primary school 5 or 6 years old, which is a little too early for me because I started at 7. And but that's the reason why they increased it to 3 or 4 grades. When I was a student, it was really illogical because I had grade 1, 3, 2, 3, and then it was 5. So we just didn't have 4th grade. I don't know. They changed it, and now they started earlier. Also, we graduate earlier than the United States. I graduated when I was 16. As a result, you start your university coursework earlier as well, so you kind of graduate a little bit faster. So, how do you transition from secondary education to higher education? So there are two major documents that you need to submit. Your secondary school diploma or high school diploma, but all the grades are in there. And since 2004, there's an equivalent of an ACT score, which we call ZNO. But I think the main difference is that there are 10 different subject areas of ZNO. As far as I know, ACT is just one score, or is there?
There's 4 different.
4, okay. So there's 10 there, with the Ukrainian being required for all programs. So no matter where you're applying, there always have to be Ukrainian, and there is some variety in there as well. So it's also a fairly recent, but it has been developing ever since they started it. In higher education, one of my favorite things about it is that most public universities offer full tuition, but only if you are on top of the students who are submitting. So it's really interesting because sometimes you might be somewhere in the middle, but then because the student chose not to enter this university, you can be bumped up and you get refunded. That's what happened to me. I already paid my education and then they refunded it to me because I went a little bit higher. They're relatively inexpensive, so there's no such thing as student loans. Students don't get into debt for years and years to come after they graduate. So I guess that is a good thing, but there is a downfall to that. I'm going to talk about it a little later. There's also no GPA system. So when I transferred my credits from my Ukrainian university to the US, it's been a really long story. It was very difficult to do. So I guess that's one of the reasons why Ukrainian diplomas are a little less valid. I guess it's very hard to make them valid in the US. You really need to work to prove that those points correlate with the American system. Now, another very big difference for me is the course load. We get 4 or 5 classes a day on university level, which are 90 minutes each. We don't have online classes yet. You essentially go to university Monday through Friday and you spend 8 to 9 hours there, and then you come home and you do homework. There's no time to work. It's very uncommon for students to be part-time students and work. Like here, which I think is very common. I think education in the United States is built in a way that students can work and support themselves in some way. There are so many student assistant positions, but it's not the case in Ukraine. You would have to not have a life if you want education, but this is something that everybody goes through. So again, something I mentioned at the beginning, you are placed into a class and you follow the same coursework year after year. And the courses last for a year, also just like in high school, not semesterally. So winter holidays is usually the midterm for all your classes. If for some reason you fail a certain number of classes, you will be asked to repeat the whole year, even the courses that you have not failed. Yes. So it has happened to one student from my group, and that was really upsetting. But yeah, just not yes, we will. So student-professor relationship is the last thing I'm going to tell you about. It's very formal. There is a very vivid isolation between the student and professor roles. I was really scared to talk to my professors when I first got here in my master's program, just because of this very vivid segregation. There is very small social factor, like you don't tend to communicate with them about your life, relate about your experiences. It's more on a formal level, which is something I didn't really like. I enjoyed much more in the United States. So about 4 years for bachelor's and 1 year for master's. So overall, as a conclusion, education is important in Ukraine. And it's uncommon to not have even a bachelor's degree. But because it's so accessible, it loses its value. You would need a bachelor's degree even for the lowest paying jobs, just so that you have a bachelor's degree. It wouldn't even matter what it is. So you don't get in depth getting your education, but at the same time, it's harder to get those opportunities that you have in the United States. I remain hopeful. I hope things will get better, but I'm happy to be where I am today. Thank you.